Boards games is what we're talking about. Boards games, I'm not gonna shout. We are starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over today, we're going to talk about how games can be messed up if someone picks a name that they choose that this person's going to win. It can take the game for a wild spin. And over there, it's the one that they call Alan, or if you want to use their full name, it is Alan Paull. And my scream, it is virtually upon the person known on the screen as John, or Jonathan Philip Chambers to use their full name, or Jon Chambers to use a slightly lesser name. And
the lesser name. I know that's not what you meant.
About boards games. I'm not gonna shout. Hey, good morning, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
And we've got Alex already. Lovely to see you. And Cheap Sheep Games, so they're not too far from you, John. Southern Australia, New Zealand, they're kind of close.
Not really close.
I mean, it's like, UK and
Moscow.
Russia?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Is Moscow on the west? Is Moscow on the west?
Well, ish, yeah.
I mean, on the west of Russia.
Yeah, if you mean Russia, it is pretty much, 3,000.
I mean, how someone can actually find some equivalent distance from England to somewhere 3,000 kilometers away. Tell us how we can compare.
I think it is about. It might actually be Moscow. I think I measured that a little while. I don't know when it was. For some reason, I was measuring. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Can't forget to see. It is lovely to see you.
Well, I like to think if I'm driving 100 kilometers an hour, how many hours do I need to drive?
Is this true?
Moscow's about 2,000.
Moscow only 2,000 kilometers from London.
From Dover.
From Dover.
Or it might be London.
That adds another 40 miles or something. I mean, what's 100 miles between friends here or there? But yeah, it's kind of 50 miles from here to the coast. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how much of a difference this bit makes. I mean, we are basically at the same. This is longitude, right? The longitude is the time zone, or is that the latitude?
Is that why you put me down here? I'm on the bottom.
You're on the bottom. Yeah, you're in the sun.
Yeah. Northern hemisphere on the top, southern hemisphere on the bottom.
So I'm in Russia.
This is the divide.
Yeah, I'm in Russia then, and Bez is in the UK, and you're in Australia. There you go.
But thanks to the wonders of the internet, we are all chatting together wherever you are, whether it is breakfast time or brunch time or bedtime or whatever. I can't think of any other times. The booning mid-afternoon time, the burgeoning evening, I don't know. But whatever time it is, it's lovely to have you. I am Bez. We are blethering about board games. Specifically today, as I mentioned, we're talking about Kingmaking. Maja can't be here, although they were in the description. But hopefully we will see them. And if we can let them into the conversation at a suitable time, then we will do so. I thought that this would just be kind of... I've not even written down any questions for the group, I realised, which was a bit remiss of me, which I've done for previous groups. But hopefully we can kind of just start off with a bit of a definition of what this thing is, then maybe talk about, is it ever good? In what situations would you actually want Kingmaking? And maybe talk about some examples of Cosmic Encounter or something like that. And then talk about maybe tournaments and how it can be an issue and all sorts of things. And then how we can design around Kingmaking. So that is what we've gotten to talk about. So do you have any opening statements before we get to the intro, Alan?
opening statement. Hello, everybody. Hi.
How do you plead?
I hope you're all having a great day. That was it. That was my opening statement.
Okay, John.
Oof. So are we jumping straight into it, or is this a segue?
No.
Session?
This is just like if you wanted to say anything before we get to the topic.
Should probably mention that my son was born on the 28th last month. So
that is
I'm going to blame everything I do wrong on that.
I think that is entirely appropriate.
Yeah, there we go. If I misspeak or I'm rude or anything like that, oh yeah, that's because I'm a father now and I'm tired and blah blah blah.
Well, we
excuse
can
for anything.
You for sure.
Excuse for anything.
Doesn't get any better, John. All right. I'm a
father of two now.
I'm a grandfather now. So,
yeah. Congratulations.
You still worry about them.
And
God,
Rob, lovely to see you. And it is apparently for some people Belgian bun time.
Oh! I hope you've got enough for everybody, Rob.
Hello, Javier. And longitude is vertical, latitude is horizontal. You know what? I really should do my checks before I just do this, because otherwise we end up with this sort of what I assume is sarcasm. Let's move on to brilliant things. What's a little thing which is brilliant? And I want to talk about sunglasses because, if it's summer, which, in the southern hemisphere, you're getting into spring and summer isn't too far around the corner. And, the sun's pretty bright. Even in winter, sometimes you want sunglasses. And, they shield your eyes. Here's a pair of sunglasses I've got here. They are actually purple. But one quite nice thing is that they close off your face. So there's no sunlight coming here and hitting your eyes, but thanks to this little bit here. And there's a little window on the side. I don't know if you can see that. So you still got a little bit of peripheral vision. But sunglasses, for saving your eyes, for shielding your eyes from that harsh light sometimes. Why do you think sunglasses are brilliant, John?
To stop my opponents from knowing whether or not I've got a good hand. You actually cannot control the dilation of your pupils. So if you see a good hand, it's beyond your ability to control that.
Especially
so if you're wearing sunglasses, or, you could just try to think happy thoughts when you get a bad hand or something. I don't know how the professionals do it, but sunglasses is frees you up to worry about the maths of your hand.
But, I guess it depends if you want studying the dilation of your opponent's pupils to be part of the game.
Oh, no. Sunglasses for me. I don't want my opponents wearing sunglasses. Only I wear the sunglasses.
Okay. Alan, any thoughts on sunglasses?
Well, I wear glasses all the time, and so sunglasses for me are in fact irrelevant because I have these are my computer glasses. So I have to have special distance, you see. But I have glasses which automatically go dark like the old Zaphod Beeblebrox ones. They automatically go dark whenever I come, or whenever the light's strong. So
forgot that reference.
Actually, I do quite. I think having some polarizing sunglasses just for games playing is probably quite a good idea. I like that. I like that idea, John.
Especially if you've got like UV tinted cards on the back.
Ooh, that's very nasty. But
a quick hello to Jess.
It might be a bit expensive.
Lovely to see you.
That'll pay for the winnings.
Alex suggests holding an onion in one hand, maybe an onion that's freshly cut up, maybe just squeezing it and grinding it into pulp. Milosh, hello, lovely to see you. That's Milosh's secret. Your pupils are always dilated.
You could just pop some eye drops in your eyes just before your turn to conceal your expression.
You're screaming in pain.
Hang on a second. I'll have my turn.
And hello, Eric. It is lovely to see you. We're going to start talking about the actual topic. We normally get to that around 10:20. And
That's what she says. That's what she says. Yeah, no.
So, but we
10,
will definitely
20.
get into this question, and yep, we will talk all about that.
I'm gonna time it now. All right, 10:20. Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about brilliant things, and so if you want to talk about why sunglasses are amazing, or indeed what are your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. And talking about sunglasses, I thought I would talk about Pick a Pig, which is completely relevant because, hey, here's some very fancy sunglasses on these pigs. You see, it all ties in together. You see how I did that?
That's why you thought that one up. I see. Got you. Yeah, very nice.
And in Pick a Pig, you've got to grab these pigs so that if you had that one and then you grab this one, this would be a mistake because you can have at most one change. So you've got no popcorn, different colors, sunglasses, 2 arms, so much is different. Whereas here, this would be perfectly acceptable. Going from this card to that card, you're trying to grab a sequence of cards and having at most one change between them. Grab the most cards before someone says stop, and then you play multiple rounds, and that's the way it goes. I enjoyed that. We did end up playing it a couple of times. We played it. Actually, this one also we played with house rules, which we were talking about before the show. I'm just all about the house rules, frankly. If a game is not 100% for you, but if it's 90% for you, and you're like, hey, everyone at the table is agreed, we would like to tweak it up. Maybe this one game, rather than putting out a 5x6 grid as it recommends, maybe we want to just lay out all the cards on the table, go crazy. Maybe rather than having up to one change, you want to play exactly one change, which adds a little bit of mental overload and stress. But yeah, Pick a Pig, lovely images. I'm enjoying it. That might be one that I actually keep, but it'll be one that I chat about with Chris on Sunday.
And there are also other versions like Pick a Polar Bear and
Pick a Dog and Pick a Seal.
Yes. Is there Pick a Seal? I don't know. I haven't heard of it.
I don't think it's
a Pick a Polar Bear. Certainly, we've got a Pick a Polar Bear.
Yeah. And hello, Paul. It is lovely to see you. And so, what are your recent highlights, Alan?
Right, well, we had my granddaughter for yesterday, so that her parents could kind of do their key work at NHS stuff, and we played. Beth and I played a couple of Dave Neal's prototypes. He's doing a prototype game, cooperative game. I'll show this. This one is called Whistle and Fudge, and it's a story game, and this one is Where's Ears the mouse, and he's lost, and we don't know where he is. So what we do is we get our friends Whistle and Fudge the frog and Whistle the woodpecker, and we look for ears. It's a storytelling game which you can do with a 3-year-old, and it's carefully designed so that basically the basic mechanic is you go to a location, say the old wood, and you turn it over and you read the text down, show the picture to your 3-year-old, and it has a little symbol here, half a symbol. And what you're trying to do is match that symbol with the other half of the symbol, which naturally I can't find very easily at the moment because it's somewhere in these cards. You match it. So here we go. You match it with a clue. There we go. We've got this. We've got a firefly in the. We can now see in the wood because we've got a firefly in this jar. We can then use the stuff, and you eventually match all these symbols and solve the mystery of where ears actually is and find ears. And it's really good. Very, very well made little game. Very simple, and you can lead your 3-year-old through the game. And he's done or is doing a whole range of them. I've got story number 2 as well, which is The Breakfast Thief.
Nice.
You see. Conquer the squirrel's acorns have been eaten by somebody. So he can't have his breakfast. So you have to find out who has stolen the acorns. So, yeah. the fact that it's actually ages 2 to 5. That's what put me up to actually helping to play test this one. What a nice idea to do games for that young age group. So you're focusing on things like sequencing, the social interaction, looking at the pictures, and very, very simple shape matching. And it's just a brilliant implementation for that age group.
And just
So
to
that's why
reiterate,
brilliant thing.
that is from Dave Neal,
Dave
who
Neal.
also made, I think, Baker Street Irregulars.
I can't remember. He's done quite a few other things. Yeah,
Done like the
he's a
Sherlock
good
Holmes
designer.
stuff.
Yeah,
And some of
yeah, that's right. Yes.
type things.
Yeah, he's a great designer. Of really,
And
really.
that's an unpublished prototype. So
An unpublished
far, so
prototype, but I think it's due to be published soon. I hope.
okay.
Yeah. So if you've got a 2 to 5 year old, watch out for that one. That would be great.
Oh man, yeah. Alan only makes war games for kids, says Xate. And I just want to acknowledge the confluence of this that both on YouTube and Twitch, people are saying if there isn't pick up a penguin, I will be very disappointed. So anyway, let's talk about what are some of your highlights, John.
Oh, before I get to the big highlight, I just must say, you got to rename Conquer the Squirrel. That's copyright. You could get in deep water for having Conquer the Squirrel, and also he's in a very adult game, not appropriate for children. But yeah, pick a different name for the squirrel, and that sounds like a good game. Anyway, my son was born on the 28th of October. So, yeah, and you know, I've given him the most board game rename ever. If anyone wants to take a guess, I haven't told any of the people here.
Oh, board. It's. I can't think of an obvious thing. Like,
Now, it's not named after a designer. I didn't name him after a designer, so
is
you
it
can.
Is it named after a character in a game?
Nope, not a fictional character either.
Is it named after a mechanic or after a game?
It's not after a game. It's not after a mechanic, but you're getting closer. You're getting closer with mechanic.
So it's not Reiner.
No, not after a designer.
It's not David.
Yeah, it's not after a designer or a
honestly
character.
have no idea. If people want to guess, then people can guess. Let me also acknowledge Sate's recent highlights, which was getting a comic about a bouncer not letting in people unless they are named Dave, which Sates was chatting about yesterday, and then Rob Harper and Maya both drew comics for Xates, which was pretty lovely to see. But Xate's friend not named Dave will be very upset about the same comic, as that bouncer is letting people into a box of chocolates. So it's going to be printed out and put onto Xate's box of chocolates. But sure, is
No
it
more guesses?
wood or sheep?
No. Oh, that would be a horrible name. Calling that in
Roland?
that was a good guess, but no. I like that one though. I like that. Roland Wright.
Dan? Okay, I have no
No
clue.
more guesses? There we go.
Any
No.
clue, Alan?
No, my son is named Victor.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's really the
Very
only
nice.
yeah.
Very good.
It's the only name in the
Yep.
dictionary that doesn't sound ridiculous. I say that cautiously. Who else has got their name in the dictionary? I'm sorry, I just called your name ridiculous. But yeah, Victor. And I really meant it that way. I want, my son to be a winner.
Yeah.
And like even when he loses, he's still the victor. So
Well, congratulations. And can we have some love hearts in chat for Victor Chambers, I guess would be.
yeah, Victor Chambers. Victor Leo Chambers.
Victor Leo,
So
good.
congratulations to your new child, and I hope that they have a wonderful life and grow up to be the one of the most excellent people around.
And I really hope they grow up to like board games, because otherwise you're in
Alright.
dire trouble.
Hey, it's the risk you take. It's the risk you take.
Strong name. All the best for Victor's future.
My daughter was first able to roll over onto her side when she was 7 months old. Victor did it at a day old.
Oh, wow.
So
Precocious and a board gamer. That could never happen.
yeah,
Yes.
Exactly.
Let me do. I know I said I would get to the main topic by 20 past. Let's
Here we go.
questionably
you
quick
go.
questions.
Oh, yes.
Where are you? What time is it?
Who's
Which
going
way
first?
round are you going? Oh, right.
Oh, start with me. Okay. So it's 8:51 p.m. in South Australia,
Ooh,
and
okay.
I am the same place I was last time, in the wool shed. You'll notice that every now and then I will be adding one of my labels onto these balls of variegated yarn. So if you see me a little distracted down here, that's what I'm doing.
And Alan, do we even have like questionably quick questions? I feel like maybe we should just skip them when it's a group chat. So let's.
I'm
So,
where I normally am, and it's the normal time for this show for me. There you go.
Huntington. It's
Huntington,
10:21, right?
Huntington, UK. It's 10:21, and I'm in my office. Well, I still call it my office, even though I'm retired. I know I should stop calling it my office, shouldn't I? I should call
It's
it
still an
something
office.
else
No, it's still an office.
now. Well, I'm getting rid of the big filing cabinet, because I've closed that company down. So that's going, or is it going? I might put other stuff in it, but the trouble is, it's a filing cabinet. I don't need a filing cabinet. So
Your prototypes.
prototypes. Yeah, do they go in the filing cabinet? The prototypes
Yeah.
they're all covered up under these bits of cloth.
And
Make it
just
look neat.
says no skipping the questionably quick questions. We'll see what other people say, but we'll have I'll close it after literally 1 minute. So it might just be this one question: who would you most like to play a game of Conkers with? Let's keep going round the same way. This way.
Well, that's the one with the.
String
We're actually
and
talking.
a conquer like it's a horse chestnuts. I would like to play a game of Conkers with I don't know, am I allowed to raise people from the dead? Am I allowed to give sentience to things? Like, could I pick a tree and then play a game of Conkers against the tree? Am I allowed to say I get to play Conkers against Gandalf? Because that would be pretty cool, just meeting Gandalf, frankly. So yeah, I've not put any thoughts into this, but you know what? Yeah, sure, Gandalf. How about you, John?
Do they disappear once the game is over? Is it just
Oh, no,
only
you
for the
win.
duration of the game?
I
They're
think
gone.
so.
Oh,
That's
no.
what I'm
You win
assuming.
them, surely.
See, I would need more context because, from South Australia, Conkers isn't really big up here, so down here. So I don't know. I'd need to weigh up the experience of the game as to who's most appropriate for it.
Okay, so more thought required. How about you,
Yeah, more
Alan?
thought required.
I'd like to play Conkers with Napoleon if I can raise people from that. I want to play with him because apparently Napoleon famously has to win so much that he cheats at games. So I want to see if he'll cheat.
Ooh.
I want to see if he cheats at Conkers.
Well,
So,
I mean, Napoleon might be pretty good at cheating without you noticing, though.
Well, maybe I'd film. I want to film it and then review it afterwards very carefully, because this is a scientific exercise. I want to find out: does Napoleon have to win so much that he's prepared to cheat at Conkers?
I mean, you need to set the rules of the game very clearly, though. I mean, like I said, in our playground, people knew that I was varnishing my Conkers. It wasn't like I was lying about this. I was putting on many coats of varnish on the Conkers.
Did you put them in the oven? Did you put them in the oven? Heat them. You have to heat them.
No.
Dry. No. Oh, that's the way you cheat. That's the real good way to cheat. You have to get it exactly right. The length of heating and the.
I mean, we already had this thing where there was clearly a line because no one actually put their Conkers into concrete. But
Well, yeah. Or you make something that looks exactly like a conker, but is in fact a piece of rock, and you make it.
Oh, you carve a
So
conker
you
out
carve
of
a conker
rock.
out of rock, paint it so accurately, and of course you'd have to make sure the paint was sufficiently good that it won't chip off. Well, modern technology, I'm sure you could do that.
Yeah, we could create a better conker. Okay, I'm going to stop it there, and sorry for the lovers of the questionably quick questions. I will start doing more silly stuff on other days.
Okay.
But yeah, let's get to the main topic. Feel free to comment, ask questions, fun like follow. I do want to give a shout out to my own Discord, because Bez and Friends Game Day will return January the 9th. Alan Paul, you said that either 9th or 16th would work for you.
Yes, still on either 9th or 16th for me.
And it is going to be on the 9th. Because Eric Slauson, who made Monstrosity, who's based in the USA, is going to join us to show off Monstrosity, which I'm super excited about, because that is an excellent game about, it kind of subverts like a police lineup. And of course, we're going to have March of Progress from Alan Paul. So please come in and get games demoed to you by the people who make them, and it should be a good day. Let's get into the main topic, which is, of course, king making. Now, what is king making? Basically, John, I feel like you have some strong opinions on this, so let's let you start up the definition, or do you want?
Well, there are categories of king making. Okay, yeah, and it's even though they look similar on the surface, they're poles apart when it comes to how they come up, why they come up, and how to deal with them. So the first type of king making there is when there is a three-way competition of some kind where you can harm others. It's in your best interest to harm the person who's winning. And so really simply contrived games of three-player, that's called a truel, which just shows that if you've got a really simple idea of you kill someone else or try to, there's a percentage chance of that happening. And in that game, the person who is the most powerful is not likely to win at all. Whereas the person who's the least powerful is the most likely to win, because they just stand back and wait for the two giants to knock each other out, and then they just come in and pick off the winner. So that's one form of king making, where the design of the game makes it such that the weaker player generally wins and the stronger player generally loses. And that has been most prevalent in Cosmic Encounter. There's also some others, Root, Munchkin, stuff like that, where it's player balanced. So being really good at the game doesn't mean you're going to win more often. The way to win more often, Settlers of Catan as well, the way to win more often is to appear weak and then have a burst of power at the last moment that no one saw coming. So that's the one form of king making. The other issue, the other form of king making, which is completely different, is I was saying before that games have got a certain utility function where, like, winning is good. Coming second is, you don't want to lose. This outcome is better than that outcome. But when someone's utility function is different, they're like, no, I want my friend to win. I don't care what happens to me. I'm happy to completely sit the game out so long as my girlfriend wins. That's not the game. That's not how the game was intended to be played. That's not how the game was designed, how the game was balanced. And a lot of games are not designed to withstand letting your girlfriend win. And so that's another form of king making. And so each of them are separate issues, and you might be okay with one of them in your game, but want to make sure that the other one is not present. And that comes down to personal preference as a designer.
Now, there's a lot that you've touched upon, like it comes down to high interaction and of course touching upon games like Risk, which are all about it comes down to the politics, like it is the interpersonal politics. And I just want to give a shout out to Krusty Napkins. Yep, we are talking about Kingmaking, and yes, it is live. And someone says that they really should make a game called Kingmaker. Maybe such a game would be all about Kingmaking. Is Kingmaker all about Kingmaking?
Cosmic Encounter's done that. Just play Cosmic
It'll
Encounter.
So,
never happen.
whoops, I meant to have this scrolling at the bottom. Alan, tell us about Kingmaker very briefly, and
only briefly. Well, yeah, Kingmaker is an old game, 1974 originally came out, which was the Kingmaker there refers to Neville Warwick the Kingmaker. So it's not to do with the traditional kingmaking in games we've been talking about here, but Neville was a guy who made kings. I mean, he was instrumental in getting Edward IV on the throne. He kind of controlled Edward VI for quite a long time. So in that sense, he was a kingmaker. But even for him, it didn't work because he came to a sticky end anyway. So yeah, Kingmaker is not necessarily a game with kingmaking in it, if I can be controversial. Although I would say Kingmaker is a political game. So I would actually contend if you're playing Kingmaker properly as a political game, you probably will want to do a bit of actual kingmaking in the sense that we've been talking about it here. So you may want to, for example, ally with a stronger player, particularly if you haven't got your own royal piece. You want to ally with somebody who has got one, which means you are actually helping somebody else to win. But because you're allied, you are actually winning together. So that's slightly nuanced, I think. So yeah, Kingmaker, different thing, may be relevant because of the political aspects. And that's probably enough about Kingmaker.
So would you say that Kingmaker is all about kingmaking and it becomes a feature of the game?
Kingmaker is about deciding which royal is going to be the king at the end of the game. So if you control a royal piece, then you're still in the game. You're effectively in the mix. If when all the royal pieces have been claimed, you don't have one, then you should be looking around for an ally. Now, in that sense, you are lending your weight as a player, as a faction, to somebody else who's got a royal piece. So you are helping somebody else to win. But the way I am redeveloping the game, you would win as an alliance. So you're not just choosing who the victor is, you're allying with the victor. So you're becoming one of that victorious alliance. So it's not kingmaking in that sense. Now, the classic Kingmaker didn't have kind of strong alliances in it. So I'm sure that in the classic Kingmaker, there will have been times that a third player will have decided, well, that guy killed off some of my nobles, therefore I'm going to try and help the other guy to win. That will happen, particularly if it's a very, very long game and people are looking to end the game because maybe it's gone for 6 hours, which used to happen.
So with Kingmaker, the game, it is about thematically making someone a king rather than within the codified rules of the game, making a single player the victor, which Kingmaking, I mean, can I just acknowledge the fact that it's like a lot of our language, it is very gendered. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
oh well, yes. King. One of the royal pieces is Margaret of Anjou, so there can be a female.
I'm not talking about
female king. I know. Yeah,
the game. I'm talking about as a game term. Like in that context, it makes perfect sense because you were trying to get the King of England to be the new king, but in it's kind of like kingmaking in a game context when you're influencing who becomes the victor of the game. Shouts out to Victor Chambers. But who becomes not the winner of this game? I'm going to even change that. We're just for the duration of that. So otherwise, I'll be constantly thinking about your son. But it's not a bad thing to be thinking about your son. And long may they be a healthy and wonderful individual. But yeah, having someone be the winner, why should that be seen as the king? It's maybe ties into tropes about people playing board games being men, and it kind of yet another teeny tiny, I'm not saying like it's a big deal, but it's yet another one of those straws that can build up to become a barrier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure where the term king-making in games came from. Maybe, I don't know if it came from Warwick the Kingmaker. I don't know, actually. That's an interesting point. I don't know where the word king-making in the context that we're using actually came from. Does anybody know that? Somebody in the chat probably know. I mean, my view on this kind of area is that a starting point is, in a way, that all multiplayer games, more than two, are really a negotiation about who is going to win. You could argue, I think. Well, at least you could argue that. I would probably.
I mean,
and in a way, king-making is one of those situations where you could, in a multiplayer game, that particular player did something that was sufficiently bad for me that they've really annoyed me. And that means that if I can't win, I'm going to make sure that they don't win. Now, that is a perfectly valid situation to be in, because because games are social interactions, aren't they? And if somebody really pisses you off, you don't want to help them. You're not feeling inclined to help them. I think there are kind of valid social things like political things like that, which are fine. Where it's king making on a whim, there's no real reason for that to happen. It strikes me as being that's where this breaking the utility function comes in, I think. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to help somebody to win if somebody else has broken some form of the social contract. I'll give you an example.
It does kind of tie in, and just a quick bye to Cheap Sheep Games and hello to Nicholas, but it kind of really ties into the permeability of this magic circle. Do you know what I mean? And how it is a negotiation, and maybe like king making as a bad form is when there is too much permeability. I mean, have you ever gotten into a situation where someone says, "Oh, if you don't let me win, then you're this completely outside of the game thing isn't going to happen," or you start trading with things completely outside of the game?
Yeah, I think that the king making aspect, which I think is the, if you like, the reprehensible one, partly sometimes anyway, is where it's outside the game things that come in. Like, diplomacy used to have one of these. If you have a lot of people who play a lot of diplomacy, some people have been known to carry forward into the next game what happened in the last game. So you get two players who will always ally, and they'll kind of, I'll win this game and you can win the next game, and they'll do that. Now, in a game like diplomacy, that breaks the social contract completely, because you're supposed to be playing for your interests. So having something outside the game, having metagaming it in that sense, is definitely, I think, seems reprehensible. Another example that happened to us was that we were playing a 4-player game, new game, which all of us were new. All four of us had not played before. One player said, "Oh, I've analysed this game, and I know that because of what's happened already, I'm going to win the game." Now, what Charlie and I thought was, "Oh, well, let's make sure that doesn't happen and let the youngster win." So we were actually working. So we broke the social contract because he had already broken the social contract by being arrogant, and so we made it so that the other player won. So that's why I say it's a kind of negotiation, and the social aspect of this can really impact how the game plays out.
And if we're going to be trying to define what kingmaking is, it feels like we've kind of decided that it is where there's the possibility of, given some negotiation, to influence who is going to win the game. And commonly within board gaming parlance, kingmaking situation, as far as I understand it, is when the opportunity to win for yourself is no longer existing, but you are put in a kingmaker scenario where you basically have to say, okay, well, what do I do? Either player A is going to win or player B is going to win. And it does kind of tread into these sorts of alliances, and you might have been a willing kingmaker. As Jon says, there are multiple scenarios. One is that you're basically a lame duck, and all you can do is say, well, I can't win. Okay, I'm going to do something else, and my actions are still going to influence the game. In some games, it is going to be, I'm going to actually work to prevent this other person from winning. Maybe it's even a temporary alliance. But at the point where, within a tournament, where I had this story last time we spoke, within a Kitty Cataclysm tournament, someone came in. And so I think that brings us to the end of a definition. And I see that we do have Maja just joining us. So Maja, lovely to see you.
Hello.
And hopefully, you can tell us how you define kingmaking.
So generally for me, I think kingmaking is any aspect of the game where you decide who the player is and not yourself. So any aspect of the game, intentional or not intentional, that does this, for me, is kingmaking, where you get to choose the winner without that winner being yourself.
Yep, I think that's a very clean and nice definition. Do you have any final things to say, Jon? Just because you started this off what seems like quite a while ago.
Well, when I mention utility function, it's not just I win, and if I don't win, then chaos rules. When the designer has designed the game, they should explicitly say, you're trying to win. And if you don't win, you're trying to be the second best. And if you're not the second best, you're trying to be the third best. Or, there needs to be some kind of thing like that. But when you're like, well, I'm in second place, so I don't care if I'm last because then my girlfriend wins. That, I think, is a breach of the social contract of, no, you're supposed to, even if you can't win, hang on to the bitter end and just take whichever actions keep you in second. And when you know you can't be in second anymore, take whichever actions can keep you in third. I had an example where I was playing Corporate America, which is a good game, very political in both theme and mechanic. And I remember that a friend of mine actually made it this really bad deal with my wife, where she was essentially giving away something for really high price. Rather buying something for a really high price. And then what I realized is she's feeding my wife money so that my wife can win, because there is no strategic reason to offer that much money.
Oh, there's a mistake
no.
reason.
Yeah, and so it's like she's decided, well, I haven't won, so rather than play for second, I'm going to go last but pick the winner. And that is a breach of the social contract and deviation from the utility function. We explained to everyone afterwards, no, that's not cool. That's not how we play.
But I've seen how you call it deviation of utility function with trying to hold on to the second place, as you mentioned. If there's 3 players and they're quite tight, but let's say the third one knows they won't win. Trying to hold on to second place sometimes makes them make the second player lose points, thus enabling the first player to win 100% without even the contest, because they were holding on to the second place so much that the first player actually won without any problems because the second player wasn't able to, if you understand what I'm saying. The second player and the first player are very tightly together, but also the second player is competing with the third player. And if the third player does something to break the second player, then he's destroying their chances to win whilst trying to be the second, but at the same time actually destroying the competitiveness for the first place. Do you understand the...
I
Maja,
think
by
so
the way,
long as
just, to Alex mentions, and I noticed this, that your mic was getting muffled, but it's a bit, but then it got back. I don't know if you did something in the middle of that, but just to
Sorry.
Oh, that's perfect now. Thank you very much. But
I think it depends on the nature of the social contract and the nature of the game, doesn't it? I think. I mean, I agree with John. What I would normally do if I can't win, and I know I can't win, I would, in some games, I would actually state what I'm going to do, in the sense that I would say, right, I can't win anymore, and that has to be that has to be really obvious. Everybody has to effectively agree that a specific player can't win anymore, and then I will say I will just maximize my points. Then it's clear to everybody what I'm trying to do, and I may make mistakes and not actually manage to do that, but at least it's clear. And I think in a lot of games, however, how to do that is not obvious, and people can be accused of king making when they're not actually doing that. They're just making a mess of how they're playing. Maybe if they can't win, they're losing interest, and therefore they're not concentrating enough. So I think the nature of that social contract depends on the game. It depends on the group, etc. I think.
I wanted to let's talk about when and if king making can be a good thing, and let's keep yeah, that's correct. Let's keep going clockwise from me, and so next will be Alan to talk about why king making can be a good thing. And we talked about someone, I can't find the comments anymore because it's unfortunately too old, but asked us to talk about games like Root and Cosmic Encounter, possibly. There were a couple of games that they mentioned. And so I guess you could add to that Risk, where the high player interaction is actually a way of almost enforcing a negative feedback loop, where if someone starts running away from the game, then it's everyone else to gang up on them. But Alan, would you like to talk about Root or Cosmic Encounter or any other games where king making is a good thing?
Well, I haven't played Root, so I don't know how Root does that. I think, I mean, I think personally that king making has its place as a legitimate strategy in a political game. So, I mean, my own game Confucius has got king making built into it sometimes, in that you are trying to take over government ministries, and there's a mechanic that allows you to force other players to have an obligation to help you. So you could be a player could be in a situation where they are actually, because of the game mechanic, forced to choose between one player getting some points and another player getting some points, and that is their choice. That's what the purpose is for that to arise. And putting people on the spot like that isn't necessarily a bad thing in a political game. I think it's not so good in a more straightforward, you're always trying to win and maximize your points type game. So I would say that only really if it's an in-your-face political game, that I think that might well work. In fact, you could probably have a whole game based around some form of king making. I mean, there are some games which are focused so much on interaction that king making is kind of pretty much built in, or even dummy king making. It looks like you're king making, but that's the only way you think you can win. It's perfectly reasonable as well, but that's in political games.
And then, yes, Alex brought up Dune, and as Sate mentions, everyone knows that the one faction will be doing this, so part of the game is figuring this out, part of that political negotiation aspect that Alan talks about. I mean, it's possible that this political aspect, like memory, it needs to be something that, because it is so divisive, it needs, if you have it at all, it should be, I mean, I guess deliberate and should be the focus. But
if you go back to
Maja.
Kingmaker, if you go back to Kingmaker the game, sorry, briefly, if you go back to Kingmaker the game, is it okay? I think it's okay. Is it okay to help somebody when they're your ally? I think it obviously is, and that's maybe a special case. But in so many games, you haven't actually got an ally. You're trying to fight your own corner, and I don't think you can really fight your own corner and help somebody else in a non-political game. And I think it's, do the mechanics promote that type of thing? And if they're not supposed to be there, if that's not supposed to be part of the game, then really it's quite it's a questionable design, I think, in that situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do it judiciously is what I'm hearing. Maja, do you have anything more to add on this? When should we do it? When is it good?
Kind of yes, because I mean, you can basically, players do the king making. Sometimes designers don't even have a choice. If you want to have a player interaction, you are having player interaction in making your players either affect each other positively or negatively. If you make them affect each other positively, one of the things I'm trying out is allowing them to, when they make certain actions, they score points for players that, let's say, own something or something like that. If you have positive player interaction, in that case, you are allowing for king making to take place sometimes. And also, if you have negative player interaction, you're also kind of doing that because you can attack player A or player B, if they are at the top, you're kind of king making at that moment. So I think every game that has tense player interaction allows for king making, and it's just whether we want that experience to be more or less positive. One game that particularly I know that does it is Inis. I don't know how it's pronounced. Inish. So basically there you have to take the crown to say that you are winning and survive for the whole round. I think it's the mechanic. And so basically what happens in the end, usually in my games, is that whenever someone does that, everybody tries to stop them. And the smartest way to win is not to be the first one to do it, because you want to wait for someone else to do it on the same turn so that everybody spends all their reactions, and then you're winning because no one can do anything against you. So basically, predicting the king making is one of the mechanics of the game. I'm kind of stuck there.
No, that makes sense. So it can be another skill that you use, and people who enjoy employing that skill of that negotiation, the possibility of king make it a game that they enjoy more. Jon, do you have anything more to say about why king making might be good?
Yes, definitely. First, I really encourage everyone to look up Truel, Truel. It's a 3-player duel. And it will explain with a very simple game how the mechanics of how adding a third player means that the weakest player is going to win in lots of general games, and how that's a problem that you need to design against. Or a 3+, it will be the weakest player that wins. So let's just take that as read, because I don't have time to explain why. So take that as read that the weakest player is going to win. Now, if we have a look at Cosmic Encounter, Cosmic Encounter has got kingmaking, so the weakest player is going to win. And the other issue that Cosmic Encounter has is the player abilities are wildly unbalanced. So you could, just through the luck of the draw and choosing which player you are, get a really powerful character. But that means that you're likely to lose because the weakest player wins. So, but then from that, you need to convince them, yes, I am the most powerful player, but because you're all ganging up on me, I am going to lose. So if you could just loosen the grip from my neck a little bit, I won! So that's how the game works. And that's the whole game of it dominates the game of just, no, don't pick on me. I'm not winning. I won. And if you're okay with that experience, keep kingmaking in the game. But if rather you want your game to test who is the strongest player, who is the weakest player, don't have kingmaking, because the weakest player will win.
I'm not necessarily completely convinced by that, actually, although I know it's a thing. I'm taking History of the World. Have people played History of the World? History of the World is it's a game where each round you have a particular civilization and you're trying to maximize your overall points at the end of the game. But the balancing factor is that if you've got least points, you get the first pick of the next civilization in the next round. And there are certain civilizations, like the Romans, for example, which are have got more pieces. They're just stronger individually. So often in History of the World, you can get the situation where by the last round, you want to be able to pick one of the leading countries which have got which can get overseas empires. So England or France is ones you want to get. So a lot of the game is about who is in fact winning. We don't really know. The thing is, the victory points don't necessarily show who is winning. I can be sitting here quotes in last place by 1 point, right? And people will not pick on me because I'm last, which is definitely, you should pick on me, definitely. It's recognizing when somebody is winning or not. And the VP track in a lot of games doesn't actually show who's winning at all. And that is very misleading to call it. And in some ways, calling it a victory point track is kind of vaguely iffy, because during the game, when you're recording things during the game, it doesn't show who's winning, because it's the board position that shows who's winning, not the victory point track. So at the end of the game, if I get to pick England and I'm 4 points away from the leader but coming last, I am going to win. So a lot of the game there is engineering that I get the best choice at the end of the game. I want to have the first or second choice at the end of the game, because it gives me more pieces to win. So I think what I'm saying is kingmaking is not just about not hitting the leader, because a lot of people think, well, you've got to hit the leader because he's got most points and he or she is more likely to win. Kingmaking is not hitting the leader, because the board position, the victory point track may not equate with the actual strength. And I think, going back to John's first comments, kingmaking is about it requires knowing who the most powerful is. If you know who the most powerful is and aren't focusing on them to an extent, then you probably are kingmaking. But
Unwittingly.
unwittingly, but in a lot of games, knowing who the most powerful is really, really difficult to discover. I mean, actually, DMACA is another good example of that, because very often you just cannot tell who is winning. It may look like somebody's winning in the next state for votes and stuff like that, but if everybody just hits that player, there may be another player who's got votes coming up, who's got a lot more influence in states which are coming up later in the game, and they're actually winning, and you're hitting the wrong player. That happens quite a lot in games which have got VP tracks, longer games which have got VP tracks during the game. I mean, Civilization, the old original.
I think that this difficulty of analysing the game state is a really interesting point.
So what I'm saying is kingmaking is not just not hitting the leader. That's completely separate. That's a completely separate thing. And maybe I may want to not hit the leader for other reasons.
But it's knowing who is the actual leader versus who is the leader on this victory points track. I mean, for example, Power Grid is one game where it's clear that the person who's furthest along in the victory points track, there is such a negative feedback loop in that game. Rules on, okay, if you are further ahead, then you're disadvantaged during the auctions, you're disadvantaged during this other part of the game. So part of the game is like actually being, you might want to be last, but be very close, or you might want to be second, wherever you are. You want to be maybe 1 point behind the person in front of you, ideally. But that kind of understanding who is actually in the best part of the game is what determines your strength as a player. If we're talking about like strength denoting someone who is making strategically better decisions. But when, John, you talk about wanting to reward a stronger player, that whole negotiation is part of what could be considered strength of playing that game. Do you know what I mean?
Well, what I was saying before is that it becomes like the strength of the game is no longer being able to find the combo, being able to, you know, calculate arithmetic on the fly or analyze the position. The strength of the game becomes being able to compose a convincing argument that you're not going to win and then win anyway.
History of the world has a lot of that. It has a lot of table talk, and it's very important table talk. Some people really, I have been in games of history of the world where people say, "Shut up, don't talk about this," and you think, well, no, actually, this whole game is about negotiating who's going to win. So you can't not have table talk.
That's how I win Magic games. Magic the Gathering. It's the only way I win. Convincing other players that I won't win. Because my decks aren't that strong. I just go along with everything and say there's no chance I will win, and then in the end I win. We play multiplayer always.
And for sure, if you don't know the game well enough, then that's, you know, your problem when someone suddenly leapfrogs you. And then, but let's get into why it can be a problem. Let's keep going clockwise, starting with John.
Well, so as I said before, Cosmic Encounter is effectively a game of trying to convince everyone that you're going to lose, and sometimes you're burdened with the issue of having mega powers, and everyone needs to stop you because of your mega powers. And are they stopping you enough to the point where you can't win at all, in which case they're probably doing a bit too much and letting someone else, and so on and so on. And so if you would like a game where it doesn't matter how good your arithmetic is, it doesn't matter how good your spatial reasoning is or your dexterity is, what really matters is how well you can convince everyone that you're going to lose. If you want that to be the test of who is the winner, then kingmaking is the thing for you. You should definitely include as much of it as possible. But if rather you're trying to have the victory mean that you are the most talented person or the most dexterous person or whatever skill it is that the game is supposed to be testing, then you need to eliminate all kingmaking from play. So that way it can be a true test, and the king making is just the noise that flips whatever the results should be. So is that the experience you want? If you're trying to create a test of skill or some other outcome, that some other measurement, because every winner is a measurement of something. It could just be the measure of who got luckiest. But yeah, whatever it is that you want to measure, if it's not ability to convince everyone that you're going to lose, then you need to get rid of king making. But if you want that to be what it's a test of, then have as much king making as you possibly can.
I mean, I am going to challenge that very slightly, just because even if there is a degree of negotiation in the game, you need to have that maths and spatial reasoning and whatnot to understand the discrepancy between what someone is saying and the actual game state. So understanding how much beating up on one player is going to impact them, that in itself comes down to lots of arithmetic and the other skills within the game.
If there's enough king making, it can overpower everything. And I mean, literally, in Cosmic Encounter, it just overpowers everything. The whole game of Cosmic Encounter is working out who is the winner. And if you can convince everyone that it's not you, then you've won.
Yeah, it's a negotiation by other means, like Clausewitz said.
And you can have all of these things. And if you've got all of these other elements, then you will make a player stronger. And then suddenly it's like, oh, he's the one that's good at maths. Get him. He's the one that's, got really steady hands because we're playing a dexterity game. Get him. He's the one that's good at chess. Get him. And usually they have, in the examples, they say, well, what if there's a chess game and, some famous chess player is playing and everyone else is noobish. And we've got this game built around it. The great chess player will lose every single time because everybody's ganging up on him, even though they're no good at chess.
That's very interesting point you're making there. Bez, you have no...
Feel free to respond, Maja, and feel free to add on to why you think it's bad or other.
Yeah, I think king making is mainly bad because it mainly ends up being bad when players feel they are cheated on. It's like when someone believes they have a victory in their pocket and then they lose it. That's the main element where king making becomes an issue. So basically what I think I'm trying to say is it's not only if you're making the game entirely on the king making, it will never become an issue because that's the implied state of the game. However, in all of the games that include some sort of skill, the most skillful player will usually be the one having a problem with other people king making in that game. Sorry, I'm
ganging up on them.
Yes,
you mean?
Yes, and not only ganging up on them. As I said, any player interaction implies that king making can take place. So even giving points to less skilled players ends up being king making in the end. That's kind of.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Of course, that does beg the question of what less skilled players means, because giving points to somebody who's currently losing and who ends up winning means that they're a stronger player, not a weaker player. They may have weaker abilities, like in Cosmic Encounter. They're not a weaker player necessarily.
Yes, I
anyway,
agree.
I
But
think
we also sorry, I'm trying to connect to what you're saying. But
Mm.
also we are sometimes deliberately, the designers were deliberately trying to not let you see who the stronger player is because that makes the game boring, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it boils down. I mean, Rob's made a good point. I think it boils down to politics. And if this, and I agree with John. If the skill is the political skill you have, i.e. negotiation, then king-making is perfectly valid. That's why in Kingmaker I've talked about alliances, and it's knowing when to ally with people. Because if in Kingmaker I haven't got a royal piece and it's the middle of the game and all the royal pieces have been taken by other factions, the only way I can win is by allying with somebody. And I always think of Kingmaker as a political game, not a military game. A lot of people play it as if it's a military game, but it's not testing those skills. It's really, a lot of people don't like the kind of luck in Kingmaker as well. But it's not testing your mathematical skills. It's not testing, can I get the best odds out of this particular situation? It's testing your ability to negotiate with other players and come up with yourself as part of the winning team or as the sole winner. Because it's come more from diplomacy than it has from traditional wargaming. I mean, I think 3-player games are quite good illustrations of this. I mean, I was thinking of a game like End of the Triumvirate, which is a deliberately 3-player game. It's a really, really good example of a balanced 3-player game. And those, of course, have to be balanced, but there have to be some built-in instabilities that people can take advantage of. But End of the Triumvirate is testing technical skills in how you manage your ability to devote resources and stuff to the 3 routes to victory. And if you manage those are technical skills, you're not negotiating directly. So the table talk, I don't think, would be necessarily very useful in that game. So it's testing other skills. And as John said, if you're testing other skills, you don't really want to have king-making. Obviously, if you're playing a 3-player game, it's very easy for 2 players just to say, right, we'll make one of us win. And there's not much that anybody else can do about it if that's the way they're going to play, in which case you basically walk away, I guess. If you're the victim, you walk away. But it's testing other skills. So End of the Triumvirate, which is set in the it's Caesar and Pompey and Crassus, I think it is. So it's set at the end of the Republic. Looks like it's a political game, but it isn't. It's a game about politics, but it's not a game. It's not a political game. It's a technical game about how you use resources in the 3 areas which are routes to victory, which is an important distinction. And I suppose you could argue it's a carefully disguised non-political game. So yeah, I agree. I agree with John in this one. It's if it's a game testing political skills, king-making is fine. If it's testing other skills, you don't want king-making in if you can avoid it, because that will, at least at some points, break that social contract. Well, some people will break the social contract because they can.
For sure. I'm not going to say, like all things, and I'm aware that this is just hidden to of us. Nicholas says, this is true for all very annoying game situations. It's better when you make the game be upfront about it, like, for example, in the German name of Ludo Parchesi, which is Mensch. Ärgere dich nicht, which means chill man. That hints to the frustrating situation which will happen, that you're going to be sent back to the very start, even if you were way ahead, just because someone else decided you should, because they want to win. And luck is paramount, and the only decision that steers players' interaction in there is kicking someone back.
That's not king-making. That's not king-making. That's just making sure somebody else doesn't win. So that king-making is getting somebody else to win when you can't win. If you're just hitting the leader so that you can win, that's not king-making. That's saying I'm playing the game here. I'm playing the game.
So if you hit the leader and then you plan to win, but then you don't end up winning and someone else ends up winning instead, then haven't you kind of done unwitting king-making?
No, you just made a horrible mistake. I think you just played the
what's
game
difference
badly.
between that sort of mistake and
Intent. Somebody else mentioned here in the
but
chat. It's intent. If your intention,
so are you
is to-
suggesting that unintentional king making just isn't a thing, and we shouldn't
Yeah.
even be
well,
pretending like it is?
I think if the game promotes unintentional king making, there may be a problem. But unintentional king making because you made mistakes is what I mean. A lot of games have that, don't? I agree. I agree with say. I don't think king making can be unintentional, really. If it happens that you played a move which meant somebody else won, and you actually kicked yourself out of the game, that's just bad play.
I mean, maybe it
Usually
meant
it's bad play.
that.
I agree with Alan here, actually.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, it's not only kicking the player to lose, but affecting the player in a way that you won't. When you know you want to win, affecting a player so that they win instead of someone else.
John, do you have any final thoughts about this? About
So remember before that I differentiated the two forms of king making, and I said that there's the king making of, I just want my girlfriend to win, and then there's the other form of king making, which the other form of king making is actually an interaction that Alan isn't acknowledging as being king making, and I think that's a fine way of defining the term. And you do need to agree on how you define what the word king making is. But yeah, that's just a quibble about words, and I'm happy to adopt either definition for the sake of discussion.
I mean, it feels like normally the generally more accepted definition of the term is intentionally kind of causing one or the other player to win. But I think there is a very interesting side discussion, which might be its own topic, about influencing the winner and that sort of thing. I mean, let's go to what Alan was arguing earlier on, which I know that Richard Garfield also argued, so you're in good company. I mean, if we're going to take it as an assumption that Richard Garfield is a good designer, who basically said that any free-player game with interaction is a game about negotiation and politics. That is what any of those games come down to. First, let me actually move Alan here just to say, firstly, am I stating your position correctly?
Nearly. I think that if I would go with what John said, if it's testing other skills, then any king making type of allowed interactions is bad. But there are some special cases here. I mean, for example, if you've got people who've got very different skill levels, and this is where you get some grey area, you can have player interaction in order to discuss what everybody thinks this actual game situation means. Now, that if you're trying to help somebody to understand the game, then this is where we get to intent, of course. If you're trying to help somebody understand the game so that they make better decisions, then some form of player interaction, even in a 3-player game, may be something that you have to do. So in other words, if somebody's got relatively undeveloped technical skills for that game, you may want to have some interactions that will help them increase their skill. Now, of course, there can be trash talking, and that's very close to trash talking, isn't it? And trash talking is a thing which you can do in a game which is an other skills game, but you're injecting some politics into it.
Just to pause, let's pause just to say, unfortunately, Maja does have to leave.
Sorry, my kid is up. She's sick, and I need to go to attend to her. It was a fun talk, and I'm sorry I can't make it till the end. Bye
Good to
bye.
meet you, Maya. Good to meet you, Maya.
You
It
too.
was lovely
Bye.
to have you for part of it, and thank you very much
Thank you,
for joining
thank
you.
us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I think, Alan, there's a difficulty in that you talk about king-making elements in games without clearly interacting with them, and thanks Rob, Nicholas, and Sate, even though Maya had to rush and wouldn't have seen your messages, I'm sure they'll be very happy to know that they're loved. But I'm going to state the position. I'm not going to even say this is Garfield's position or this is your position. I'm just going to state a position that I do hold to some degree myself. That basically any game with more than 2 sides, so if you've got 5 players, but it's a team of 2 and a team of 3, you know, that's still only 2 sides. Any game with more than 2 sides where you target a specific size with any effect inevitably has potential king-making and is going to have some degree of negotiation to it. So, for example, even an auction game, because in Taj Mahal, if I wanted to negotiate and say, oh, please don't try to block me on the red people or the orange people, block McCall on the elephants. And if I can talk Chris into doing that, that becomes the negotiation aspect. And even Ticket to Ride, if I say, oh, you know what, if you, rather than doing that, you might want to go around there. I mean, you could turn any game into one of negotiation and king-making if it's...
Let's split those apart. You can have negotiation. All negotiation is not king-making. Don't forget, we are talking about, you know, king-making. One of the ways we've defined king-making is with the intent to make it so that somebody else wins, not yourself. You can perfectly easily in a multiplayer game have negotiation. A lot of that negotiation is effectively based on your assessment of how you think the strength of the various players is, and that's perfectly viable. And in fact, you could argue, if take a 5-player game, do you think it's okay in a 5-player game to effectively knock one player out because that gives you a better chance of winning? Now that is something that that's how some people play. I'll knock one player out completely so they can't win, in order that they give themselves a better chance of winning. Is that okay? Because that's linked to the kind of things we've been talking about. That's probably not king-making, but it's certainly a strategy you could use.
That's certainly a fair point about the utility of negotiation as considered by king-making. And I guess the situation where that would become king-making is in a tournament setting, which John and I have alluded to, where you say, okay, I'm not going to win, or I don't even want to try to win. I want player B to win and make player B help maximize their chances for this tournament. And so maybe king-making, I mean, this whole show it's come into, if it is, as I think Maya said, king-making is choosing the winner who is not yourself, then it is actually hard to see when it is good. Because earlier, when we were talking about situations in which it was good, we were talking about the broader aspects of negotiation and that sort of thing. John, do you have anything to say on this?
I'm going to play translator between you two. Okay, so I'm going to play translator because remember when I started, the first thing I introduced is I said there's 2 types of king-making, and I gave my 2 definitions. Now, we call it type 1 king-making, type 2 king-making, whereas in Alan's vocabulary, he doesn't call it type 1 kingmaking, type 2 kingmaking. He calls it politics and kingmaking. And so if it's picking on the winner, that's politics. If it's letting your girlfriend win, that's kingmaking. So we've been touching quite a lot on politics. And I'm happy to change that term now. I'm happy to use the word politics to describe picking on the winner. And I think now it's time to transition from politics to kingmaking. And kingmaking is letting your girlfriend win.
Or anyone else. I mean, it does
I
have
agree.
to be girlfriends. Let's talk about children. Let's talk about letting your small child win. I mean, the example that Alan gave. So, do you think it's reasonable to make a child win? I mean, I honestly don't have a strong opinion on this, but my gut would be to say not as a matter of course, but occasionally if I don't know, I would be like, okay, almost be more upfront about it and say, yeah, we're going to give you some advantage. John, you had something you wanted to say right now?
Oh, that's an easy one. That's politics. That's straight politics. Letting the child win is politics.
Yes.
Because the child will inevitably make a stupid move and lose anyway. And me in second place comes the winner because they made the mistake. But if I let the adult win, they'll actually win. And we can't have that.
Yeah. It's politics. Well, yes. And it's my children, when they were growing up, did not want, no child wants to know that you've let them win. But what the real skill of some designs is that it allows you as an adult to have the child win when they feel like they have won completely on merit. And that's brilliant. That's what you want with a really, really good family game. But yeah, you don't want to be in the situation where the child knows they've only won because you let them win, because that's negative, isn't it? That's horrible, I think. But that's politics. I mean, politics is all about social interaction, and that's about stroking the ego of your child, which is straight politics.
So why do you think people might want to engage in kingmaking? And is it when you're no longer winning that you think, yeah, I'm going to let Charles win, for example, because, hey, Charles hasn't won for quite a while?
I've got a really good example that can kind of give this conversation some structure of just what you would do in this situation. But let's suppose that we're all playing Texas Hold'em poker, okay? And I have decided that I don't think I'm going to win. In fact, it actually looks like Alan's going to win, and I am also really annoyed with Alan because he's done something horrible to me outside of the game, and I've got a bit of a vendetta. So what I do is I take all of my chips and put them in front of Bez and leave. Okay? Now, that is really kingmaking in its purest form. And so as a designer, you kind of need to write in, and you're not allowed to give away your chips. Or are you just going to assume that no one would do that and not put that clause in the rules?
Yeah, I like that. That's a very good example. And I think that well, as a writer of as a writer of rules and designer, I mean, I kind of veer away from stating those kinds of things in the rules. I tend to stick with the technical description of the game and what you can do in the game, because in a
that is a technical thing. I could be allowed to, or it could be. That needs clarification.
Maybe.
I
think
rules from a permissive rather than restrictive way. Like if you say these are things that you, if it's if there's not a rule that states that you are allowed to do something, then my default assumption would be that you can't do that thing if a rule doesn't explicitly say you can. Because saying, oh, I'm allowed to take all my chips and put them in front of someone else. I mean, by the same token, Imperial Settlers doesn't say that I can't, draw extra things on my turn. It says you get this many. I'm trying to think of a reasonable example.
I think I think John has hit on it is a really good point. How much does a game need to be explicit about the social contract? Is effectively what we're saying here. And in my designs, I've tended towards the view that the game should leave the social contract up to the players, unless some very, very obvious things that people can do would actually break the game horribly. And which is, I'm wrestling with this a bit in Kingmaker, for example, because I want to be more explicit about how alliances work, but I don't want to make it so that it just becomes a game about kingmaking. I want there needs to be some technical skill involved in this. So it's otherwise. I mean, in Kingmaker, you could just in a 4-player Kingmaker, you could start the game and you could have 3 players who just all ally immediately and say, "Well, we're going to win, and we're going to work towards us winning. Just 3 of us against 1, and we're going to win." You could do that, and actually, the game allows you to do that. I haven't put a restriction on that, and the reason why it doesn't need that restriction is because that game would be all about the tensions between those 3 players and how they develop during the game. So the game becomes, can the person who suggested that as a way of playing, can they actually hold that fast during the game? So there's still a game there, and it's still an interesting game.
Well, maybe not to the one person who's definitely not going to win.
Well, they're not. No, the whole point of it is that a lot of Kingmaker is about, can you hold the alliance together? So that one player, that solo player there is trying to break the alliance. It's trying to make that alliance fail. And the game the 3 players can't win immediately. There are certain technical things you have to do in order to win. You have to make sure all the royal pieces have been captured, for example. So the process of the game is very, very, very likely to lead to a shattering of that 3-player alliance, which looks like it's going to win. But the dynamics of the game will mean that that alliance is very likely to break. So I think if I put in the Kingmaker design, for example, in a 4-player game, you're not allowed to have 3 players allied together. That would disallow that scenario, but it would also disallow other scenarios where 3 players allying together is perfectly valid, and they may still lose, which has actually happened in our playtest. So it's a fine line. How much you actually put about the social contract in your game is a very fine line, and I think probably the more politics you have in it, the less you need to define the social contract, and possibly the more technical skill you have in the game.
I mean, it feels like
if kingmaking is possible, then if you've got a game which is really testing other skills, the more you need to explicitly state that you're not allowed to do that. So in the poker case, I suspect that, if you had that situation which John outlined, you probably would want to outlaw that, because that's not what poker is about. There's no poker skill involved in me giving all my money to Bez. That's not a poker skill.
I think that what it suggests to me is that in any game with negotiation, there's a lot of scope. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thoughts there. But yeah, it's not just about defining can you give your chips to someone else, it's also about defining all the table talk. Because when you've got language in a game, there's a lot of soft assumed rules. You're going to, at a certain level, there is the social dynamic. Okay, at a certain thing, we're going to think about how certain language can be problematic. You know, certain language can be hurtful to other people. I mean, I wouldn't, like, say it says, yeah, there's a lots of things that you could do, but we might not want to play with you again. Like if someone says, starts calling me random slurs during a game, well, that's not vetoed by the game's rules. And yeah, I might even stop playing. That's a situation where I could imagine myself, yeah, stopping to play the game, or at least saying, hey, if you don't stop this, I can't finish this game. This is really, I'm finding these words that you're using incredibly upsetting. Please stop calling me all these names. Now, yeah, within that, within a sort of game of, hey, are we going to have any negotiation? And that's something that you need to define yourselves as a group. And are we going to play Kakerlak and Poker, where we are, which there's not that much scope for negotiation, but like kind of, hey, give it to Xate. Let's pick on Xate because Xate is clearly winning, and then Xate still goes on to win or whatever. Or, but you kind of, are you going to allow that sort of negotiation, or are you going to say, no, this is not what we want from the game? And it feels like any rules understanding is an interaction between what is written and the players at the table agreeing to some super like imposition almost over those rules. Do you know what I mean?
I'd like an opportunity to hit that nail a bit more squarely this time. So again, with a poker metaphor, but I will concede that a fairly decent reading of the rules will say you're not allowed to do that. And I think that you'd really have to have something wrong with you to think that that is acceptable behavior at a poker table, because like, yeah, you're not allowed to flip the table, you're not allowed to punch the other person in the face, you're not allowed, oh, there's all of these things that you're not allowed to do, and it's quite clear, yes. But my point is that in other games, and I use poker as a metaphor because poker is a game that everyone knows how to play, but in some other games it's not quite so obvious. Like there might be something that says, well, you are allowed, like, okay, Settlers of Catan, you're allowed to trade. Okay, can I say, I will trade you my entire hand and you give me nothing ever? Okay, is that allowed? And you can be a bit more sneaky about it. You can say, okay, I'll trade you my hand, you give me one card. And then when I get more, I'll trade you that for another one card. And so in Settlers, for example, you can get around that. And you can follow the rules. You could, even if we say it must be a trade, it's okay. I can do a trade. Here's one, you give me one sheep, I'll give you all of this. And so sidestepping the how do you read the rules, you kind of, as a designer, need to decide, are you going to just accept that your players will be decent human beings, and if they're not decent human beings, then this game is not for them? Or are you going to write rules that make it impossible for them to trade their entire hand for one sheep?
Yeah, I agree, John. I agree. I mean, going back to Kingmaking, I mean, I have been wrestling with, I was wrestling, I resolved it, with that particular difficulty, because in Kingmaker each turn you get a crown card, and they can be very powerful cards. Now it's a politics game, as we know. If you have a situation where somebody just gives all their cards to somebody else, obviously that will strengthen that other person, And I looked at various ways to, within the rules, technically get around that problem. But all of those ways are really, really, really difficult to do, because I mean, you could actually enforcing some kind of trade restriction, like you can only trade a card for another card, you know, things like that. But those are all not addressing the central problem, which is at some point
Losing on purpose is the central problem.
Yes. So because it's and I think I can get around it because it is a politics game, and I just say if the cards are in your hand, you can freely trade however you like. There are no restrictions on trading, because the dynamics of the game or the group will sort that out. And you know, if you've got a situation where two people are blatantly playing together because that's what they're doing outside the game, then because this is a politics game, the only way to stop that is to not play with them. It's like diplomacy. It's the same as the diplomacy situation where you've got two people who are always ally, and you can't play at diplomacy properly with people who are playing like that. So there is going to be a certain group of players who that game is not for them. And so I've been explicit about that in the rules. So I haven't actually said that particular example, but I have certainly said you can trade cards that are in your hand freely, because all the other ways around that cause more problems in the design than allowing that. Now, of course, that's that particular game, 1970s style game, and I figured that if I change that, it really changes the essence of what Kingmaker is all about. So I don't want to do that. There are other games where you wouldn't want that to happen at all. I mean, I think Catan is a really good example. I think in Catan, don't you? A trade, I think in Catan is supposed to be you have to at least receive one card for what you're giving away, I think. But
as John says, you can keep, skirting around those rules. You can still keep making very unequal trades. I think.
But that's the social contract
from this discussion is that if there is trading, if there is negotiation, if it is a political game, then there is scope for kingmaking. And maybe we could finish up with at least some discussion about why do people do this? What's the motivation? I mean, obviously in a tournament, if you know that, okay, one person's going to win 100 quid or whatever worth of stuff, and it's like, well, we live together, so hey, it doesn't matter which one of us two wins, it just matters that one of us two wins, and then that's going to change the game quite a bit. When there's something like that on the line that comes out of the game, then that can change the game from what John cited as a desire for the individual player to rank as highly as possible, and change it from that into I want myself or a person who will give me some part of their prize or who will let me use the eventual prize. I mean, like if it's a holiday for 5 people and it's like, or if it's $1 grand and it's like, okay, we're all going to make sure that you win and you'll split the prize with us. If you can trust the person to do that, then sure. But why would you do that in a game outside of a tournament? I mean, yeah, what's the incentive? What's the motivation? Alan?
Well, yeah, I just quote that. Really, some people don't take games very seriously. I think that it's the overarching thing there is the social contract. I mean, for example, we have a gaming group on every Friday. All the people that we play with in there have more or less got the same understanding of the social contract. Everybody tries to win. Nobody carries over what happens in one game to another game. So we're all friends together and we play in that way. And if we had somebody come into the group who didn't have that as the social contract, who disagreed with that, then I think it's unlikely that people would play with that person long term. They wouldn't fit in with what I'm saying. They wouldn't fit in with our group. Now, other groups may have different social contracts, but that's our social contract. And I think that the overarching social contract is what governs player interactions. Some things are okay, and some things are not okay, and that has to be a group dynamic thing. And different groups have got different ways of managing that. That's why I think it's really difficult for a rules writer to get involved in specifying how people should play the game. I don't see that as my job. My job is to lay down the rules of the game, and you work out the social contract. I think Charles Vasey said it when he said once a game's out there, what people do with it is up to them. If they want to change it, if they want to have a different social contract, then they can. Then there's nothing you can do to stop them doing it. If they get enjoyment out of it, that's fine. It's not fine for the person necessarily who gets rejected from the group, but if they don't fit in with the group, they should find another group.
John?
Now, there is also an element of learning the social contract for your game, because now there's lots of games that all have the same social contract, and then suddenly now you're playing a role-playing game, or now you're playing a party game, or now you're playing this, and it can be dangerous taking the assumed social contract that you learned from this game and bringing it to your new game. And so just a really quick example is in the game Go. If you don't think you can win, you must concede. And teaching anyone for the first time, I'm generally saying, okay, so would you like to concede now? Oh, no, I don't concede. Okay, we play some more. Would you like to concede now? Oh, no, I don't concede. We play some more. The entire board is now my color. Would you like to concede now? Oh, no, I don't concede. I'm like, oh, God, that's not how you play Go. Because, the Go is supposed to end like a quarter way in, because the last 3 quarters is just determining who won. Putting the score on the board. You should know a quarter way in. So that's Go. Another example where the social contract isn't immediately obvious, and I don't believe this one was stated in the rules, but I kind of wish it was, is has anybody played 4-player Connect 4? So in 4-player Connect 4, there's 2 Connect 4 boards on top of each other, and the columns are interchangeable. So they are distinct from each other, but you just need to get 4 in a row, and it doesn't matter if it's this column, that column, that column, that column, because it's a completely transparent board. And also, every player has got 2 blockers, and a blocker is the same as a normal piece, only it goes in both columns. And so that happens when you know that someone is going to win. And you have to use the blocker because that's the only way. And so preserving your blockers is integral to winning. And so what I'll typically do is I'll give the example that we're all playing. It plays 3 players as well. We're all playing this Connect 4 with the blockers and whatnot. And so I place my move. It's now Bez's turn. And I say, look, Alan is going to win unless you block him. And then, well, I blocked him last time. Yes, but he's to your left, so you need to block him. No, that's not fair. I blocked him last time. It should be your turn to block him. I'm letting him win. Because it's not said in the rules that you have to block the person to your left. And it's a kind of teething experience where I will have that person, no, I'm not blocking them. I blocked them last time. It's your turn to block them this time. Where I said, no, you block the person to your left. That's how it works. And every time I've had to, because it's happened several times, and I had to take the player aside and say, no, this is how you play.
I'm going to apologize. I'm going to have to stop the conversation here. There's been a lot of really interesting stuff, and I think that we've touched upon unwritten rules and social dynamics and clarity of stuff, which I think would be a really interesting thing to get into in the future. For sure, in poker, if you read through the rules, it generally bluffing is not something that's even in the rules. It's just an emergent dynamic. And so talking about those mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics if you want to use the full MDA framework. But it has been a really great chat, and so yeah, for sure we could talk more about negotiation, we could talk more about the different motivations to play, and we could talk even more about kingmaking itself. What we have talked about is pretty much just having a definition. I feel like that's pretty much the bulk of what we've achieved. That even though, like, kingmaking, okay, it's all about that intentional thing, but there's still two aspects to that, to my mind. And I will give you the opportunity to refute this or disagree, but to my mind, it's like kingmaking that you set out to do at the start, and then there's kingmaking that you decide to do parts way through the game because you're giving up. Do you know what I mean? And I think those two aspects, even though they might be the same mechanically, the way they feel to the player, because it might be, okay, well, I can't win, okay, I don't care, okay, I'm going to give the game to that person, versus, okay, throughout this entire game, I'm going to give the game to my partner, like maybe Jess gives the game to me, I don't know. But we have talked about Sunglasses, we've talked about Pick a Pig, we've talked about Truel and Dave Neal's games, we've talked about Victor, we've had Maja join us for a wee bit, which it was such a shame that they couldn't come in for longer. We talked about kingmaking being, in some instances, reprehensible, where it's about, you want to make sure that you're focused on the individual win for that game. I loved Maya's, description, which is it's choosing a winner who is not yourself. And I think even within that description, we could have cut out like probably an hour of discussion, because choosing, there's an intent, it's a choice, and it's a winner who's not. And when we think about it, all that stuff of when is it good, we basically focused on negotiation. And it's about having a game that has the possibility for kingmaking does allow that negotiation to still work. But what I've really taken away from this conversation is that you can't get rid of the kingmaking possibility without getting rid of a lot of other things that will be really good for the game. And that is the critical thing, that there is such a big requirement for the players when you're sitting down to play a game together to say, hey, this is how we're going to play this. I mean, Jess talks about can't stop when Alan was telling them to, I mean, it's not a negotiation game at all, but Alan was encouraging them to kind of not take any risks. Sate was encouraging them to take all the risks. And it's just a game of chatter and glee and schadenfreude and then converse. But when it's actual kingmaking, I think that it almost feels like, we do need another thing to say, why do people do these? If people are bringing those teams into the game, I mean, if you are trying to make, if you are playing as a couple and you want your partner to win, then maybe that's okay if it basically you say, okay, this is a game of teams of two, and then it's essentially no longer kingmaking. Maybe and we get into house rules of like, but there's such a big topic, and do you have anything to say about the wrap up before we properly wrap up? John, go first.
I just wanted to respond to something you said, because again, you've created another division between kingmaking that happens at the start of the game versus kingmaking that emerges throughout the game. And from a design perspective, I don't really see the difference so much as like, there's kind of a difference between sitting down to play a game and my opponent punches me in the face, or the punch to the face emerges throughout the game. Either way, it's a punch to the face.
But we can get into that another time.
That's good. I mean, I think the thing that we've got, which would be really good to continue the discussion on, and we haven't got time, is how does the social contract for this game affect what winning means? I think that's kind of what we've kind of been going, because we have talked about. I mean, and we haven't really talked in the difference between tournaments and not tournaments. So I think that for me that's the key. How does the social contract for this particular game influence what winning means for this particular game? I think that, and I'm hoping that in most board games that we sit down to, we already know instinctively what the social contract is. The rules are defining what winning means. So most of the time, we're probably not having to think too hard about that social contract, because it should be, and that's where you get gaming groups which continue over time, isn't it? Because people play together because they like playing together. That means they agree about how to play the games generally, I think. So how does the social contract for this game influence what winning means in this game is what I think the key point is for me, anyway.
Yes, for sure. A conversation about social contracts would be fascinating. If you want to check me out, I am stuffbeds.com, stuffbeds.bitcards.com, twitter.com/stuffbeds, instagram.com/stuffbeds, twitch.tv/stuffbeds. I stream every day at 10 a.m. UK time and Tuesdays. For future streams, look at stuffbeds.com/streams, youtube.com/c/stuffbeds for the old things, and go to stuffbeds.com/discord for the Best and Friends game day. Now, Maja, if you want to check them out, is on twitter.com/creekgeek. You have a spinning fibre store if you're interested in what Jon does for work, and if you want to check out the print and play files for their game, then go to that Google Drive, which is all linkable wherever you are. And there's surprisestargames.co.uk, twitter.com/benfinfish, twitter.com/surprisestar, boardgamegeek, Alan Paull. And I'm sorry I'm reading out all your things for you, but in the interest of wrapping up, I do want to thank everyone who's been watching. I want to thank everyone who came up, and Maja, Alan, Jon, it was wonderful to have you. Everyone in chat, thank you so much for engaging in this conversation. And we've got 2 minutes to say, over to you. What are you up to? You can share something if you want to. So yeah, if you want to share anything, give a shout out to anything, something you're looking forward to, hopes, ambitions, whatever. Alan.
We have got Virtual Consequences board games test this weekend. So we will be playing board games virtually with lots and lots of LARPers this weekend. So that is what I'm looking forward to. It starts on Saturday and it will go into Sunday as well.
Yes. Jon.
By the way, everyone, please feel free to check out that link to print and play file. That is a game that is soon to be published. And when it is, I think that file might disappear, or, well, it'll have some updates. And also, if you have a look and you say something really influential, this is your chance to have an impact on how the game develops.
And Sate says that when I say thank you to everyone in chat, yes, no love to the people the one person who got banned and the one person who wasn't a person. So no love for robots, even though, well, I'm not going to say down with robots, but just down with robots or just coming in and spamming links. That's not cool. But yeah, thank you everyone. I'm going to do hopefully finish off some rules writing. I am going to rate, oh yeah, I already said share, spread the word. I'm going to raid Loz Bros. If you're watching on Twitch, I recommend them. They do funky music. That is an excellent thing. Thank you again, everyone. And the only thing to do is to say bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, everyone.